Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Legal Tech Week, the show where our panel of legal tech experts talks about the top stories of the week in legal tech and innovation. It is January 24th, 2025, and I'm Bob Ambrogi. I have my own podcast called Law Next and also a blog, Law Sites, where I write about legal tech. And we have a kind of light panel this week, various people off in various directions. And as somebody pointed out just before we started recording, it is a manel this week. So you'll have to bear with us. We try not to do that, but this week we couldn't avoid it. So our panelists this week we have sitting in as a guest panelist again is Greg Lambert. Greg, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. And I just want to remind people that it's only 11 months and one day till Christmas. So, and I know we're on a manual, but I have my favorite comic book, which on the cover says, let me tell you about my feminist agenda. So, I've got Morning Bird or Mockingbird. I don't know why I got that. Mockingbird there mocking me. I'm Greg Lambert. I am the Chief Knowledge Services Officer at Jackson Walker, and I am in temporary space, so I'm not moving out. But I'm going to be in temporary space for a bit while they do some renovations to the main office. That's my day job. On the side, I do the Geek and Review podcast with Marlene Gaybauer and the Geek and Review podcast. I think I said that. And Three Geeks and a Law blog is the blog. So we're getting off to a great start here, Bob.
If you don't know the name of your own podcast,
I just can't think of my own name sometimes.
Yeah. And is Cash a book about how to earn money or about the musician?
No, Cash is Johnny Cash, and that's the album is Jerry David DeSica that does the music on my podcast, and I love the music on my podcast. So,
oh, cool. That's an actual album, an LP
yeah,
sitting there on your
yeah.
shelf. All right. I like your priorities in arranging your new office. All right. And Victor, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am Assistant Managing Editor for the APA Journal. Yeah, I didn't know we were showing off our LP collection. I actually have a bunch that I could show off. So that's too bad, though. Maybe I'll bring them out next time. I have a Taylor Swift album.
Thanks.
Actually, I have
Really?
two Taylor Swift albums.
All you need now is a turntable.
I do have a turntable, yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. And Steve.
Hey, I'm Steve Embry, and I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads about legal technology and legal innovation.
All right. I used to have, well, I shouldn't say I used to have. My wife used to have a really, really crazy LP collection. She was in the music industry for years when I first knew her before she decided to go to the dark side and become a lawyer herself. But we had ridiculous numbers of LPs, which at some point we said, what the heck are we doing with all these LPs, and got rid of them. And oh, if we only had any of those anymore, right?
I used to have a pretty substantial collection, and I did exactly the same thing. Get these little compact discs. They don't take up any room at all, and I could get rid of all these bulky things.
Exactly. Right. What was the
Albums
first
are
compact disc?
albums
What was
are
the first
super heavy,
compact
though.
disc you bought?
You got to make sure
God,
you've reinforced the
God.
floors.
Does anybody remember what the first compact disc they bought?
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
REM's out of time.
Mine was Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA.
Mine was Bob Marley. What's the name of his classic album? I can't even think of it. But that was when I was living in the Virgin Islands, so that explains that.
Everything's gonna be all right. I can't remember what the album.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the album.
I shot the sheriff.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, on to legal tech. We've got time to kill today. We don't have that much to talk about.
I don't know. The LP discussion may be more interesting.
It may well be more interesting. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Actually, well, so I don't know if this is, no, I guess there's no LP or CD tie to this, but Victor, I thought that the story that you picked out to talk about this week had caught my attention too. I thought it was kind of interesting. You want to tell us about that one?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, this Case Western Reserve University School of Law, which is in Cleveland. No, yeah, right? Somewhere in
Yeah.
Ohio. Cleveland, sorry.
Actually, down the
Um,
hall from Greg. You just don't know where.
Yeah.
yeah, I get them confused a lot with some other schools in that area because Ohio has a lot of schools that you wouldn't think were there, I guess, but like they have a lot of schools and universities there, so it all kind of jumbles in my mind a little bit. Plus, I'm from Pennsylvania, so we kind of can't acknowledge that we know anything about Ohio. So but yeah, so Case Western Law School said that they released a press release this week saying that they will be the first in the nation, which of course always raises my antenna, but I haven't heard of any other law school doing this. They're going to require all first-year law students to earn a certificate in legal artificial intelligence. So they have to take a class called Introduction to AI in the Law, and they'll have to learn about fundamentals of AI and its impact on the legal world and whatnot. And the class is being taught by Oliver Roberts, who's a guest on my podcast this past week. We had predictions for the upcoming year, and he couldn't talk about this because I guess they hadn't quite made the announcement yet. But now it's out of the bag. But yeah, I thought it was interesting just because I mean we've talked about this on the program, just how our law school is going to deal with artificial intelligence, and are they going to make students learn about it? Are they going to encourage it? Or are they just going to say whatever? And so you have to have a law school actually come out and be like, okay, no, we're going to not just encourage students to learn about this stuff. We're going to require them to do it. And so that I thought that was interesting, and that's definitely a step further than where I thought most of the law schools were heading. So no, but it's interesting, and I mean, we've talked about it again on the show where this is going to be a tool, a skill that law students, lawyers are going to have to know about if they want to be able to compete or even work effectively as an attorney or a legal professional going forward. And so it's good to learn about it, especially while they especially in a law school environment where they can be surrounded by other people and experts and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. I don't necessarily I mean obviously we'll have to wait and see how what the results are like and how things go and if other schools will pick this up. But I mean I think I don't know if more schools will start requiring it, but I definitely thought it was interesting that they took that approach.
Are they cutting legal research and writing to fit this in?
Well, I mean, it's a good synergy there, though, right? I mean, like, because I mean, then again, when I was in law school, they had just started with the putting Lexis and Westlaw available online, but we still had to use the books for certain assignments because they wanted us to know how to do it in case we went to a law firm or a legal practice or a government agency that didn't have access to online resources. And I laughed about it at the time, but then when I started working as a prosecutor in New York City, we did not have access to any of the legal databases at all. So not even the books. So we had to like rely on like memos from the office telling us what certain cases said and how we should argue them in court and whatnot. So it wasn't the highest level of lawyering as far, but it definitely shows how far we've come since then. So yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely synergy there with as far as like applying it to legal research, but I don't know if I'm sure the class will touch on that, but I mean, I don't think that I don't think it's going to be like they're going to teach them together though.
It was interesting as you were talking, Victor. I recall when my son went to college, he was going to major in business, and the first semester he was required to take a course on how to use Excel spreadsheets. And they gave him various examples or various problems, and which was quite a handy course to take. But it sort of made me think that maybe that's with this AI certification we'll kind of get to the same point with law schools and artificial intelligence.
And did the Excel course make him decide he didn't want to go into business after all, or?
There were a number of other factors.
That could be enough of a turnoff.
Well, yeah, he actually got got some stuff out of that because I mean, we all have to use Excel spreadsheets a lot, and I'm not very good at it, but it turned out to be a pretty valuable course, and it sounds like, Victor, this could be too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool thing. I think it's a good, I don't know. Not sure I understand why the certificate aspect to it, as opposed to just saying it's a mandatory course you have to take your first year of law school or something. I don't know what the certificate necessarily adds to it. But the write-up talks about them. They're going to be teaching AI fundamentals, practical applications in legal practice, ethical and regulatory guidelines, best practices in data and client management, driving innovation and addressing legal challenges. A lot to cover. I assume this is a one-semester course. It's a lot to cover, but I think real kudos to them. And it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting if in a couple of years they don't have to teach this anymore because everybody's already figured it all out. But right now, I think it's really important, and it kind of goes back to that whole question of whether lawyers should be subject to some kind of mandatory tech training. I think we're still only up to like 2 or 3 states that have. I think it's maybe 3 states that have some kind of mandatory CLE, tech CLE for lawyers. 2 that have tech CLE, and maybe 1 or 2 others that have like data privacy CLE. So I guess good that it gets trained in law school, because there are a whole lot of lawyers out there in the world that have no understanding of this stuff, as we know.
Yeah, I wonder if the whole certificate thing is just like, an AI thing, right? I mean, because that way you could put on your LinkedIn or your resume or whatever that you're certified, or you have a certificate of this, or you're certified, in AI and the law and whatnot, and then it might trip like an algorithm for a law firm or whatnot. They'll say, oh, well, we're looking for people who are certified in artificial intelligence in the law, and here we go. There's this guy from Case Western who has it. So I mean, I wonder if that was it, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it may have been part of the, and I'm just guessing here, part of the pitch for getting the class in the first place is, hey, not only will they take the class and have that on their transcript, but also they can go on LinkedIn and put that they have a certificate in this. So I don't know. I remember trying to pitch new classes when I was at Oklahoma City University Law School, and the class that I pitched in 1998 was a computer law class, it was interesting because it immediately got accepted, and then there was another professor that came in right after me that had a really good class that would have been very, very interesting, and it got shut down. So sometimes it's timing as well.
Yeah. It does continue to surprise me, though, how many law schools still haven't incorporated any kind of tech training into their curricula. So when a school is kind of going this extra mile and not just incorporating tech, but kind of mandating it and teaching cutting edge tech, then it's really noteworthy. And hopefully other schools will follow this as well.
Well, the incentives aren't there to teach tech. So it's
the incentives being what, making the U.S. News and World Report ranking, or
either that or passing the bar. So
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
the
Good point.
incentives for law schools are hiring percentages, bar rate passage percentage, maybe publication, a couple of other things, but teaching tech, and as Kristen mentioned, math, not an incentive to teach either of those at this point.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, since we touched on the topic sort of peripherally of legal research, that gives me a transition to talk about legal research, and specifically Bloomberg Law. Greg, you had a chance to learn more about their new AI thing, which I haven't really had any chance at all to even think about, let alone look at. So curious what you're seeing.
Yeah, so on the podcast this week, we had Bobby Puglia, who's the chief product officer at Bloomberg. Bobby's been there quite a while now. And I did want to close the loop on the LP and say that this is Bloomberg LP that Bobby works with. So they announced two new products, new AI products that are integrated into the Bloomberg Law platform. It's really, I think it's an interesting approach on how they're doing it, because most of the legal research tools tend to be chatbot, kind of what you see with an OpenAI, ChatGPT, and the other models where you prompt the system, and so you kind of have to know what you're doing in order to do the prompting. And I think this is part, and I brought this up. I think this is an influence from their buying Dashboard Legal back, I guess almost a year ago. I think it was in April, where they're looking
Another Startup Alley winner.
Yeah, but I think they're looking more at how can we integrate it into the overall workflow of what the attorneys or researchers are doing, rather than having it as a separate independent piece where you go over here, and start putting in your prompts, or feeding it documents and chatting with the documents, that sort of thing that you get with the Lexis Plus AI or the Westlaw Precision tools, or Westlaw Co-Counsel. And so we did talk with Bobby about that, about the workflow, and I think that they see this as more integrating it into what attorneys are used to. So the Bloomberg answers in the AI assistant is much more of you do your searching, or you pull up the information that you want, and then it's a button off to the side to help you summarize the information that you have, and it will give you some additional questions that you can ask, or from there you can ask the AI to help you look at the source. And so it's it's not far off from what you're seeing with others, but I think just the interaction part of it is much more built into the system with them doing the prompting, rather than asking the user to be an expert in prompting.
So is it both? Is it a legal research tool in the sense that the Westlaw Lexis AI products are, or is it more for querying and summarizing the results of your research that you've assembled, or does it kind of do both?
Yeah,
of
so
those?
the two pieces. So there's the Bloomberg Answers, which is much more set up to go across their platform to grab information from additional resources, but you're basically starting from something. You're not going to Answers as a separate product. It's built into what you're doing, and so you can use Answers to grab in more information from across the different verticals that they have. And then the AI assistant is much more of the summarization and chat kind of interface with information that you pull up. So if I pull up a document on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little, the new little whatever icon is for artificial intelligence, that one. And then you'll say you want to summarize this, and then once you summarize it, you can then interact with the information, or you can it gives you additional questions that's already written out that you can click on, and it will continue to kind of guide you through it. So a little bit more hand-holding on Bloomberg's part for the researcher, which I think, again, for where we are right now, probably a really good idea for some of the folks that are just cutting their teeth on the AI products.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing it. I was away at a conference last week when they announced it, and I've got a briefing scheduled next week. They got a demo of it. I haven't seen it yet. So
And Kristen asked if it was a chat bot. No, it's not a chat bot. It's just part of the interface. It's mostly a click where it's already kind of set up what it expects you to ask. And so you don't chat back and forth with it. There is one part where you can, like, ask about a certain document or what you're working on, but it doesn't, come back with a chat answer.
so basically pre-configured prompts that let
Right,
you get more
exactly.
information out of it.
Yeah, and I've actually only had a couple of times where I've had. I mean, we've got it. I've played with it a couple of times, more with the AI assistant because that's kind of built into my workflow than the answers part. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much, again, it's guiding you through it rather than you trying to chat with it.
So then do you have less
Somebody's
control?
asking.
You have less control over your work product then, or is it? I mean, because it seems like if it's kind of like a prepackaged thing or like I mean, because I mean, if you're not prompting it, then oh, like, yeah, how much control can you have over it, or is it just, or is that not the point of this?
You can ask it questions, but that's not really. I don't think it's kind of the primary part of it. So it's not like the other. I've used Lexis Plus AI a lot. I've used Westlaw Precision AI a lot. On that, it's much more. I put in something, I see it come back with something. It's more of a conversation. This is much more of a fine tuning, if I can kind of do that in that, it narrows down what you're already looking at. So it's interesting. It's not that far off, but again, it's a lot more built in. In that I guess that comes with the pluses and minuses on that. And Laura asked if it's on the pricing. If you're a Bloomberg subscriber, it's built in, so that's it's not like a separate product. It's just built into the product that you have.
One of Bloomberg's hallmarks all these years has been all-in-one pricing, right?
Yeah.
And they've stuck with that, which is a good thing. All right, Steve,
Yes.
would you like to tell us about your pick of a story this week?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. It was an article Sarah Merkin wrote in Reuters. And it mainly had to do with the investment that's going on in some legal tech vendors that cater to the plaintiff's contingency fee marketplace. The reason it kind of caught my eye is at least I am, because I come from a billable hour background, I sometimes tend to forget that there's this great body of law firms out there that they don't bill by the hour. I mean, they are pure contingency fee lawyers, and when you think about that business model, you think, well, they should be embracing technology maybe much more so than the billable hour people, because to them, time spent is money lost as opposed to money gained. And most of us that write about legal technology, I mean, we tend to focus on the billable hour guys. So it was interesting to me. I mean, there's a lot of money being invested in these companies that cater to the contingency fee market. I mean, the numbers were, 135 million for one, 25 million for another, 35 million for another, 47 million for another. I mean, it's obviously gaining some traction, and most of the tools seem to be in client intake, but maybe more importantly, case evaluation. Well, one of the companies indicated that the data that they used was personal injury cases, sort of from the plaintiff's perspective. And is maybe just state the obvious, but for contingency fee lawyers, it really is a whole lot about evaluating the case and knowing, kind of figuring out what it's worth quickly and early. so you can determine whether you're going to get a payout at the end that makes it worth your time. So I thought all of this was really kind of interesting. Is there's the tech that's going into the plaintiff's marketplace. There's also the litigation finance folks that are going into that marketplace, and it's you know I wish I knew more about it. And I wish I had some ins with some of the contingency fee lawyers. My background was a defense lawyer, so when I pick up the phone and call one of them, they're like, "No, go away." Which, if I was a practicing lawyer and somebody, from the plaintiff side called me that was, turned to be a blogger, I would probably do the same thing. Um, but I've often wondered whether anybody has undertaken a substantial survey of plaintiffs' contingency fee lawyers and how they're using technology in their workflows, and whether they're embracing it more than the billable hour brethren. Uh, I've never seen a survey or study like that done. I've voted the idea to some people every now and then that might have the resources to do it, but it never really happened. So anyway, that was kind of why the article she wrote was pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's a couple of different, I think, phases or aspects to this. I think originally, I think PI lawyers were not fast to adopt certain kinds of technology, but were probably among the earliest to really adopt a lot of the sort of marketing and intake and CRM sides of legal technology, because they have so many prospects to manage and to kind of filter through and figure out where the good cases and the bad cases are. So I think they've been maybe a little bit ahead of the curve on that part of it. But I think it's interesting to see these big startups, like you mentioned, like Eve, that are really focusing on that market and raising some big money. And there's a broader set of sort of litigation focused technology that's maybe not just plaintiffs and defense, but suddenly all these Gen AI enabled tools for transcript summarization, for drafting pleadings, for drafting discovery responses or discovery requests. There's just been a flood of new products in that area over the last year. It seems like suddenly everybody's got a transcript summarizing tool or a timeline tool, litigation timeline tool, chronology tools. So the litigation market as a target for tech products is really, really exploding. And then there's sort of adjacent techs as well, like the company Proof that does service of process. That's kind of sort of been disrupting service of process by developing a tech approach to that. And I think they've raised close to $50 million or so. So, it's a really, and then you mentioned the litigation financing, which is also adjacent to all of that. So that whole area is a really, really interesting area.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna grow quite a bit. The interesting thing about the plaintiffs marketplace is, for years it was basically smaller law firms that ran the plaintiffs practices. Even the ones that got the really big cases were kind of
Sure.
smaller shops. And now, and I guess that's still true, but you've got Morgan and Morgan, which holds itself out as the world's biggest law firm. And it may be, I don't know, but I can't. It's hard for me to think that they don't have some pretty sophisticated uh, technology that they're using to evaluate cases and streamline them and run them through. And maybe that'll have an impact on a lot of the other plaintiffs law firms. But you're right. I mean, there's a kind of an explosion of tools in the litigation space.
Well, the
Yeah.
company Litify spun out of Morgan & Morgan, right?
Right.
They were
That's exactly right.
developed
Yep.
in-house as sort of their internal practice management system or case management
Yep.
system.
That's
Spun out.
exactly right. Yeah.
It's interesting, Steve, because Joe Brita, who is the predecessor to Bobby Puglia there at Bloomberg, is now at what is it? It's Gordon and Gordon. I can't remember it, but it's basically a a law firm that represents men with high dollar value in divorces. And that's one of the things that they brought him in to do, was to really look at the technology and get them up to speed on how they could be leveraging technology to help them, kind of increase their margins on this. And I think that firm has like 300 attorneys or something like that. I mean, it's not Morgan and Morgan size, but it's pretty huge.
So a lot of high
300
dollar
attorneys
divorces out there.
qualifies as a big firm.
Yeah, that's a big
300
firm.
lawyers.
That is a big firm. So, and then one other thing is, last week I had on Patrick Ip from Theo AI, and he talked about doing analytics for the litigation funding or groups as well. And one of the things, and Marlene kind of like stopped him to make sure she heard it correctly, because he was saying that a lot of these litigation funding places were not leveraging their data that they had, that they were essentially evaluating cases on a case by case basis rather than coming up with, looking at past cases and determining, what worked really well in this. Did we do really well, or did we did okay with this? What was the reason? And so he said that was, he was new to the industry, so it didn't surprise him. But we kind of stopped him and was like, wait, you're telling me that these places that pump millions of dollars in are basically going off their gut?
Right. Well, and Greg, there was a time not that long ago where some of the litigation funders were actually out seeking experienced retired or semi-retired litigators to come in and help them evaluate those cases that they were going to invest in, which is, I mean, I'm one of those people. I can't sort of blame myself, but I'm not sure I'd want to go off on. I would much rather trust the data and the analytics than my gut instinct about a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. So did you take one of those jobs, Steve? Going in?
I did not.
Probably good money while it lasted.
Yeah, I think it's it'd probably be more in demand if you were able to be an expert in the analytics and the data and mining that than you would be on providing your gut instinct about whether somebody's going to recover $1 million for a slip and fall case when you've had one or two of them in your entire career.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess staying on the topic of sort of a trend. I mean, that's a trend in personal injury tech for personal injury lawyers. I was going to bring up with I don't know what's the expression about bad things happen in threes or good things happen in threes or something. It seems like suddenly there's like not just like somebody rolls out something and then suddenly everybody's rolling out something. And in this case, it happens to be custom playbooks. There are all these AI contract review products out there. And of course, if you are working in an in-house legal department, often you'll have your own, so-called playbook, your kind of set of rules and preferences and language clauses that you like to use in particular kinds of agreements. And if you're an in-house lawyer at one of those companies, traditionally, when you're reviewing an incoming contract that somebody's submitted to you for review, you're going to apply your playbook to it and say, no, this clause doesn't work because we prefer this language or whatever. It's not new that some of these contract review software programs incorporate playbooks in some way, but generative AI, this is another example where generative AI seems to have inserted new energy into this whole area of tech development. And it's just been oddly coincidental that in just the last few weeks, just this week, I had a story that Legal On, a AI contract review company, they launched something called My Playbooks, a feature that enables legal teams to customize their AI contract review according to their internal playbooks. A week before that, LexCheck announced a new feature, custom playbooks, allowing legal teams to create custom playbooks based on their own, basically auto generate playbooks based on their own prior work product and documents that they've used. And then earlier this month, Spellbook launched a playbooks feature to allow legal teams to create custom playbooks. Last week, Agiloft acquired this company called Screens, which has developed a whole set of these expert curated playbooks where they've gotten lawyers who are experts in a particular kind of contract to create off the shelf, basically custom playbooks. And that Screens product also allows for sort of auto generation of playbooks based on prior work product. So here, within the course of about a month, we've had 4 different legal tech companies launch this custom playbook feature. At least one of them, when I was interviewing them and talking about it, I said, they said, this is a first of its kind thing. And I said, other people do this, right? And they're like, no. It was one of those moments we've all had when we're interviewing somebody, when you're like, really? You hadn't looked around the market at all?
Monica will be turning over in her grave.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hasn't Practical Law done this for 20 years? I mean, they've got playbooks as well, so.
Yeah, but these are not sort of templated that the company is providing. They're providing technology to allow companies to sort of turn their own existing contracts and work product into more custom auto-generated playbooks.
Yeah, and
Which is a little different than
PLC,
what
you had to do
Practical
it
Law
manually.
does. Yeah, but there have been companies out there. I think Black Boiler's had this for a couple of years. There've been others that have done this before, so this is it's not new. I do think that generative AI is kind of putting new energy into this because it lets it get done better and maybe a little more accurately and more easily than it's been done in the past. And I've already interviewed somebody else about something that's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks that kind of also does this. Refreshingly, that most recent interview that I can't talk about yet, but it's under embargo, but they did say, yeah, we know everybody else is doing this, but we think we should offer it to our customers too. So,
Yeah.
so
Everyone's doing it, but this is the hot new thing. So.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess when we all go to Legal Week in a few weeks, we're going to see the booths displaying custom playbooks and PI law and all that. I don't know what's going to happen. But it is funny how these things, I mean, it's a pattern I've seen kind of repeatedly over the years where, it's when it rains, it pours kind of thing. When somebody comes out with something, then it seems they must have all had some inside knowledge of what they're all each doing, because they all start coming out with it at around the same time. And it just happens all at once.
Yeah. It's like when Bob and I launched our podcast the same week. So.
Exactly. And would have the same guests. So that was the worst part. Now we all just have the same guests.
Yeah.
I'm like you're trying to schedule a guest for my podcast, and I'm like, well, I can't do that time because I'm doing so-and-so's podcast then, and then I've got, and then people want to come on my podcast to promote their podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a pitch the other day about someone who was just like, they're launching a brand new podcast, and they're like, we think that you would like to plug our podcast. Like, why would I want to plug your podcast?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Victor.
Oh, well. All right. Well, that's all we had, I think, right? Is there anything else we want to talk about this week?
I've got a couple of things since we've got some time.
I'm not going anywhere.
All right. So the one that I saw this week, and I was really hoping that Nikki would be on because this would light her fire right now, which is the class action lawsuit against LinkedIn and we all knew a few months ago that they kind of defaulted everyone into accepting that their public LinkedIn information could be used for training the Microsoft's AI tools. But the latest row was the fact that apparently the premier LinkedIn subscribers have access that they pay pretty heavily for in-mail. So it allows them to send messages to others. It's mostly used in marketing, but some other areas use it as well. Well, it turned out that by default, even though you were paying to have the privilege to use this, they were also scraping all of the in-mail content that you were sending back and forth, according to the lawsuit. And the lawsuit itself stressed the fact that a lot of these in-mail, because they are recruiting and others, is that there's things like salary requirements, job descriptions, and things, kind of things that you would think were confidential, going back and forth that were being scraped and put into Microsoft's AI training. So, and allegedly. So we'll see how that goes. But and I thought again someone made a good comment today after I posted it. And it was like, well, when you put your business on another business's platform, you're taking the risk of that business may change how it operates and then may undermine what you're doing to build your business on their business. So just something to think of.
Yes and no. Because I mean, I feel like, I mean, with the profile information, that kind of stuff, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're putting it out there. There's no privacy on social media. I mean, even if you use the settings, everything's still available. But I feel like with the in-mail, especially like inbox, like email stuff, there is sort of still like a expectation of privacy there. I mean,
Absolutely.
even if it's not, even if they say, in the fine print or whatever, you cannot expect this stuff to be private, but still, like, when you use the email feature or the message feature, you're not necessarily expecting that to be used. I mean, and yeah, like you said, like there could be really sensitive information there, like how much, yeah, like how much you make, even that you're looking for a job. Like what if you're like trying to look on the sly or on the down low, and then it gets out there, to your employer that you're looking. So I mean, yeah, I would be very nervous about using that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Victor, on that. I feel like that the messaging feels private and feels like that's not fair game, especially when you're actually a paid customer of LinkedIn in order to get that privilege of being able to use that messaging.
Yeah, and this is one of those things. So one of the actions that the lawsuit is requesting is for that information to be stripped out of the AI training. But as we've all known, I think once it's in, it's almost impossible to extract just that little piece out. So I think at some point it may be Microsoft has deep enough pockets to take a huge hit on something like this. Um,
Yeah,
and I
it's
don't.
chump change for them. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but and also I didn't see Bill at the presidential party, so I think he may be on the hit list. So
And he's not part of the
now part of the tech bros,
not
the
part of
Doge,
not
what was it? The Doge, the
Doge,
Department
yeah,
of Government, whatever.
government
yeah.
efficiency, yeah.
What about Star? We had a request from the audience. What about Stargate? What do we all think about Stargate? The one where Trump made a huge announcement and Elon almost immediately like undermined him, saying, "Oh, well, I'm not sure the money is really there for this." And
See, this just see, I have a theory about Trump that all of his ideas just come
We all
from
have a theory
television.
about
No, but like Space Force. I feel like Space Force only came about because he probably watched like Star Trek or Star Wars on television one day. And he was like, "Oh, we should have that for our country." So I feel like everything is just comes from television. So he probably watched like an episode of Star. Or Stargate's a movie, right? Was it a TV show too, or no? It was a movie, I think.
I think it was both.
Yeah. So maybe he saw it on TV one day. He was like, "Oh, Stargate, that sounds fun."
Well, something
It's
something he
hard-
can
it's hard-
brand.
It's hard to imagine Trump and Elon Musk having a continuing long-term relationship. It's just that there's too much testosterone or something there.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine that that's going to last very long.
Yep. At some point, Trump will pull his Elon security detail. So.
But in this one pitches Sam Altman, puts him into the mix, and Sam Altman and Elon Musk already don't get along. So it seems like a kind of combustive combination in terms of trying to. I mean, I don't necessarily think the idea of it is a bad thing. I mean, I think it's a smart move to want to invest in building up AI infrastructure within the United States, and it sounds like a good concept. But
that was part of the
sounds
CHIPS
like it
Act,
hadn't been all that.
right? I mean,
I don't know.
The CHIPS Act was part of that, and one because of the being able to get chips from Taiwan and the limitations there, and so like there's a huge Samsung operation going in right out in Taylor, Texas, right outside of Austin, which that town was about 3,000 people a few years ago, and it's going to explode. But again, it was because they wanted to make sure that whether it's computer chips or it's the GPUs, all of that, get that back on shore here. So it's not nothing new.
Yeah. All right. Actually, one other quick story I came across that I just wanted to raise because I thought it was awful. I don't know if you guys saw this. The winner, speaking of Startup Alley at ABA Tech Show, not that that's all I talk about, but it's coming up soon. But the winner 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Turn Signal.
Oh yeah.
Turn Signal, which was this app basically for, if you're a person of color and you get stopped by a police officer, you kind of activate the app and it can connect you to a lawyer in real time. So you can kind of like, before you beat me up, officer, let's get my lawyer on the call. A clever thing. Anyway, Jazz Hampton, the guy who founded that and has built it up, a lawyer, he just announced this week that he's running for mayor of Minneapolis. And I thought that was a really interesting development. He's a cool guy, and glad to see him. He's had a lot of success with the company, I think, and it'd be interesting to see what happens there.
What could possibly go wrong? I don't know.
Well, we've had some interesting candidates in Minnesota lately. Wasn't that
Right.
that Senate candidate who I'm not comparing Jazz Hampton to any of these guys, but I'm just saying Minnesota in general. I mean, they had that
Jesse Ventura?
basketball player. They had they had a wife of a hockey coach, wife of an NHL player. They had Jesse Ventura.
Mhm. Yeah.
Jesse Ventura.
Walter Mondale, all the crazies.
Hubert Humphrey.
Right. Back when the Democrats were Democrats. All right.
Back when they were something.
Back when there was something.
Okay.
Oh well. All right. I guess that's all we have. So that's okay. We made it to almost an hour. That's close enough.
Yeah. But did you
good.
see the Anthropic and Thomson Reuters co-counsel news yesterday?
No. Man, where have I been?
Which is interesting because
What was the news?
Co-counsel, which is the original case text guys, which were really in early with OpenAI.
Mm-hmm.
So they had an announcement yesterday that they've been working with Anthropic on doing a kind of an enhancement on their citation system, the ability for the AI to cite to specific documents and improve the. It's still a RAG-based result system in that it's limiting to a certain set of core documents that it's referencing. But OpenAI, or I mean, Anthropic has developed a process which, for a lot of us Boolean searchers, is going to sound familiar, in that they essentially take the information and they chunk it into paragraphs and sentences. And so for us old Boolean folks, remember when it was introduced that you could search within a sentence, within so many within a paragraph, which was actually literally taking the information and putting it into sentences and putting it into paragraphs and indexing it in the database that way. So it's a very similar technique. You know, it's a much different process, I'm sure, but essentially the results are the same. But it's supposed to significantly reduce the hallucinations because it can better attribute and cite back to the original sources, and then thus with the hope of reducing the overall hallucination rate. So
it's like
one
pinpoint
interesting that they're
sort of a pinpoint citation on
kind of
on steroids, and
yeah.
letting you verify right at the exact point in the case where the
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one interesting that they're having big relationships that Anthropic would announce their Thomson Reuters partnership, and that they are working on, again, hallucination, still a problem, but now hopefully less of a problem.
Very cool. All right. See, this is why you should listen to Greg's podcast, because you get to learn all these great things. Victor, you should have had him on yours. That's all I can say.
No, he's always welcome on my podcast. But
Yeah,
I'll
I'll call you back up and see if we can rework that out.
yeah.
All right.
We'll spend the whole hour talking about our podcasts
Yep.
and our LP collections. It'll be
Very meta. Yeah.
Well, somebody suggested earlier in the chat we have a legal podcast about legal podcasts. We could do that.
Yeah. Well,
actually,
do we have in the legal tech world the 3.5 or 4 hour long podcast platforms yet?
Oh God, I hope not.
Bob, let's start that, man. Let's do it.
I don't have enough hours in the day as it is. I can't record one or listen to one.
Yeah, all the kids are listening to 3 and 4 hour podcasts, so let's give them what they want.
If there's a way to merge like legal tech with true crime, so I guess maybe who's that guy that got in trouble recently? But yeah, maybe that's the way to do like a 10-part podcast or something that we can put on iTunes.
Yeah. What's your do you guys listen to podcasts besides your own? I mean,
I listen.
What's your favorite non-lawyer podcast right now? What's your non-legal? What do you listen to that has nothing to do with law?
I listen to Hard Fork.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of other ones that I listen to, Search Engine, and there's a new one. I can't remember. Victor, what do you listen to?
Non-law. I don't listen to a lot, but I listen to there's a Manchester United podcast I listen to that goes to their official website. So very often they'll have like actual like former players on and stuff, which I like to listen to it, even though the club is terrible right now. So that's good. So they bring back players from the old days when they were good, so I can like at least relive that part.
Steve, anything you listen to?
Yeah, I listen to some of David Sparks' stuff, which is kind of legal and not legal, and then I listen to some of Kara Switzer's rants and raves every now and then, they're always interesting.
She's interesting.
Yeah, she's interesting. Rethinking is a pretty decent podcast. I listen to that some too.
I had forgotten that she did that interview. I think it was 2012 or somewhere around there with Zuckerberg, where he was sweating so profusely that she was like, "Hey, why don't you go ahead and take the hoodie off?"
Yeah. Yeah.
She can be pretty interesting.
Yeah. One I listened to, it's just a short 6 episode one that I just binged on recently that's really, really fascinating to listen to. It's called Shell Game. Have you listened to that? It's tech reporter. I can't, I'm blanking on his name. I don't have it in front of me. But what he does is he creates a voice agent for himself, an AI voice agent of him, of his own voice, clones his voice, and then sort of sends that voice out into the wild to have various conversations with various people. At first, he starts kind of playing with, people who send him spam texts and say, "Call me right away to find out about this great deal." And he has his AI voice agent go out and do that. But then he starts getting a little more serious about it each episode. Like one, he starts having it go to online AI therapists, voice therapists, and have these conversations between the therapist and his AI agent. Or another one where he sends it to work for a day, has it interview people, for stories he's doing, or tries to record a podcast episode with it. And then in the final episode, he kind of sets it loose on some of his friends and family. Again, all with them not knowing that it's an AI voice agent in all of these cases. And the conversations are fascinating. It's just so fascinating what the AI is capable of doing sometimes and what it's capable of getting so wrong sometimes. But how people play along with it because they're just not sure. They're like, is this real or not? You can tell, you can just
Does
kind
the
of
4 second pauses not clue them in?
it does clue them in. That's often what most clues them in is the 4 second pauses. But sometimes it's like when you're talking to a therapist or something. I mean, a 4 second pause isn't a big deal, It's like, yeah, I'm thinking about my answer. But that is often what does it, and also that the voice often sounded, as some of his friends said, the voice often sounds a lot more enthusiastic than he actually does. So, but it's really fascinating to listen to, and he also talks you through the whole tech of how he did it and all that, and it's fun to do. All right. That now finally takes us to the top of the hour. So we made it. Score. And we will be back next week, God willing, as they say. And we'll have more to talk about then. So thanks to everybody for listening and participating. Greg, thanks for sitting in, and see you all
Thanks.
next week.